I'd like to say a very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining. So, a very warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight as we unpack a topic that is often neglected but is essential to discuss. We are focusing tonight's session on hearing from the true experts on the subject matter, which is those with lived experience of having a childhood disability and having gone through puberty themselves. So we have three amazing speakers lined up tonight, with each one offering their own unique insights and advice to us as the healthcare professionals and caregivers of those with childhood onset disability. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd just like to reiterate that we would love it for you to use the chat function to post any questions or comments throughout the evening. We will open it up for discussion once we've had our three speakers share what they would like to share tonight. And then also just to say, we might go over our time limit of an hour just because there's quite a lot to get through. So for those of you that can stay on, we would welcome that. But also we appreciate the fact that if you are time restrained and you need to leave, we absolutely understand if you need to fall off the call at 8 o'clock. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is Taryn Gurb. She is a bookkeeper and a peer counselor who lives life with joy despite cerebral palsy. Taryn is passionate about helping people understand CP, whether or not they live with it. And although Taryn is unable to join us tonight in person, she has done a recording where she is sharing her very heartfelt experiences, and she offers some extremely valuable advice as having gone through puberty as a child with cerebral palsy. So thank you to Taryn, and I am now going to share my screen. I'll start with Taryn.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Taryn Gurb, and I have the honor and privilege of speaking to you about cerebral palsy and puberty, subjects that I am very passionate about. I do not feel that these subjects are addressed well together. They certainly weren't when I was young, and I think sometimes our special needs children are forgotten when it comes to puberty. Good evening, everybody. My name is Taryn Gurb, and I have the honor and privilege of speaking to you about cerebral palsy and puberty, subjects that I am very passionate about. I do not feel that these subjects are addressed well together. They certainly weren't when I was young, and I think sometimes our special needs children are forgotten when it comes to puberty. I will be speaking of my lived experience and then be addressing some subjects that I did not experience but are real for other girls with CP, and then just chatting through some things that parents, caregivers, guardians, and teachers and therapists and doctors can be doing to help children with CP navigate the rough torrential waters that are puberty and special needs. So my lived experience is one of being a twin, the older of two. We were born 6 weeks premature, and I'm brain injured, my sister is not. If ever there was a yardstick by whom you could compare yourself, it is the twin of the same gender. And my sister and I went through puberty extremely differently. And unfortunately, children can be incredibly mean. And there was a lot of teasing that went back and forth between her and I. It was not just a one-way street. My mouth became my weapon of choice as I hit my teens, and it was nasty. And that is not something I'm proud of. Puberty only really started for me when I was in grade 10. When I was in grade 7, all the people around me were starting to go through puberty, if not well into puberty. And then there was me, tiny, flat-chested, having no idea what it was to go through menstruating or the discomfort of breast growth. But man, I wanted it so badly. I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be society's version of normal, and I just wasn't. Once again, I was different. And I know so many girls today who would do anything to be society's version of normal. Now that I'm older, I know that normal is overrated. But at the time, I would have done anything to fit in and be like everybody else. When I was in grade 10, the crushes on boys started. They were very real. And the emotions and the disappointment of being let down and not being accepted, and competing with other girls for the school's Casanova and always being put in the friend zone was tough. And I needed somebody to confide in who had the time and the capacity to be available to me. And at the time, there just wasn't a person who could be that. This is why I believe in the importance of mentors and mentorship, and the importance of a village raising a child. Be fussy about who your village is, but allow a village to raise your children, and allow people into the village who take care of you, who is the caregiver to a special needs child. Even if you're not doing it alone, which so many people are, allow people into your space to be a safe space for you, because no one can pour from an empty cup. So a couple of things I did not go through, but I think are incredibly unfair, are the issue of CPP, or central precocious puberty. And basically that is puberty from an extremely young age caused by damage to the brain and therefore problems in the central nervous system, as I understand it, and I stand to be corrected here, but you can look it up. CPP causes very early puberty. And to this day, nobody can really say what CPP is doing to children long-term emotionally. So when I say very early, for some children, it is as early as 5 years old. If your child is exhibiting any of the signs and symptoms, well, symptoms is a terrible word, of CPP, please allow them to see your primary caregiver, or primary care physician, so that they can help you through this process. So CPP would be all the signs of puberty: under hair, underarm hair growth, pubic hair growth, menstruation, growth of breasts, all of those things at an incredibly young age. There are things that can be done to help manage CPP, as difficult as it is. Another unfair thing with cerebral palsy is, and I may say this wrong, premature adrentia, I think. I did put it through Google, but it didn't sound right to me. In contrast with CPP, this is driven by the early release of male hormones from the adrenal glands rather than the ovaries. These are mild hormones that are present in both the male and female bodies. Signs include pubic and underarm hair, noticeable underarm odor, acne, and sometimes accelerated growth. There is no early development of sexual organs. The above also applies to girls under the average age of 8. So, cerebral palsy, puberty, and understanding changes. Regardless of your child's intellectual ability, please take the time to explain the changes that are happening in their body, because they are aware that something is happening, even if they don't have the intellectual capacity to have a discussion with you. They're aware that their bodies are changing. It's important to remember that with physical change comes a barrage of very real emotions that girls often don't understand. So we cry, we scream, we shout, we withdraw, we become extremely melancholy. Mood swings are real and they are hard. Please be gentle and kind and very patient with us in this time. We're also dealing with being different because we have CP, and we're then grappling with being different because we're going through puberty. It's a bit more difficult when you have special needs and you're navigating such a tumultuous season of your life. Just because someone has CP does not mean that they are asexual. Understanding the physical and emotional feelings that come with puberty needs to be navigated very well. Addressing this with your children more than once is really, really important. Girls especially. We talk and talk and talk and talk ourselves to a solution sometimes. Sometimes we just need to be told the truth. Sometimes we just need to be heard. It may be wise if parents are unavailable for this kind of space, that you find someone who will walk this road with your child, because it is hard and difficult to navigate, and every teenager feels that no one understands them. But let me tell you, when you have special needs and you're going through puberty, you feel like an alien on a planet that has changed entirely. And because your friends are so different, you can't even rely on them, and it's not fair to do so. So someone slightly older and wiser would be helpful in this situation. It is important that children have a safe space when their bodies are changing. So how do we address cerebral palsy, puberty, and the subject of change and sexual desires and needs and physical heebie-jeebies when you get touched by a boy who you don't like, and the excitement and the thrill of the touch of someone you do like? Very basically, you can do 5 W's and an H, which is who is going through it. So it would be your girl child. What is she experiencing? Puberty. What does that entail for her? Is she going through periods yet? Is she not? When does it happen? Is it a 28-day cycle? It certainly wasn't for me, so that's an interesting discussion to have. Where in the body is all this icky stuff coming from, including the sweat? Why is this happening to me? How is this happening to me? All of these things really matter. There are books that are available that can help you through this process. Some of them, I actually haven't found one that I believe is diverse enough, but there are some available. And there are tips and tricks that can help you navigate this process. While you are having this discussion with your girl child, it is important to discuss privacy and who can and cannot touch her and where. This is a subject also for another day, but I'm just going to say predators are real, and they are closer than you think. So be wise with who you allow near your child. Okay. If you don't teach your children about puberty and the change that comes with it, someone else will. I spoke to friends at school and I got some really stuffed up information because we were all guessing and thumb sucking. It was not great. This is a very, very curious time for children. I think of both genders, and girls do talk. We talk a lot to our friends and the people we trust. They need to have an adult in their life that they trust and can go to and know that there will be no judgment. Set boundaries with your girls. This is important for their sake so that they can learn to regulate their emotions, and for your sake to keep you sane, because we all know that if your kid is going through puberty, they are going to consume as much of your time as they possibly can. Apply the 20-minute rule. So the 20-minute rule is something my mom applied with me that I still apply to my life today. She gave me 20 minutes and she timed it to rant and rave and cry or be excited or whatever extreme emotion was happening. And there were many extremes. There are still many extremes. I could be halfway through a sentence. When the 20 minutes was up, we were done. Because that's all she had capacity for, and I would have just kept going and going and going and going and going because I finally had her undivided attention. Make time to love and listen to your daughters. So if you know what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, with special needs children, we are so busy meeting the basic needs that takes so much more time than it would with a child who has not got the special needs your child has, that we often don't have the time or the capacity to love and listen to our girl children. The biggest role model in a child's life is the same gendered parent. So, moms, be kind. My mom was a very strict disciplinarian, for which I am extremely grateful as an adult. As a teen, I struggled with my mom and we did not have a good relationship. My father was the trusted parent and the go-between between my mom and I. It's not fair on him. By the same token, it wasn't fair on my mom that she was carrying such a weight. Again, build a village. You need to take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Puberty is an extremely tumultuous time in anybody's life. And for those who can't communicate what they feel, how they feel, be gentle and kind with them. It's still rough for them. They do not understand and they can't express it. For those of us who can express it, there are times that we are so melancholy that there is nothing good to say. And I grew up in a house where if you had nothing good to say, you said nothing at all. So often, nothing at all got said. The consequences were not great. Puberty is a time when your child is changing and you will not have them be the same person. They're going to defy you, they're going to argue with you, they're going to make your life as tough as possible, and they're going to push every boundary no matter their ability. as important as it is to have very strict rules in place and very strict boundaries in place, and that really is important, it is also important to have an even keel. Where there is discipline, there is love. Where there is truth, there is kindness. Make sure that your child has a safe space to come and tell you the truth without judgment, and be able to talk to you about what they feel, how they feel, why they feel the way they do. If you cannot be that person, find someone who will. It will help your child become a much stronger, better, more equipped adult. And the reality is, we are preparing our children to become adults. We are not keeping them children, no matter whether or not they're going to remain with you because they cannot go into the world or not. The reality is, you're preparing them for adulthood. So do the very best that you can. Puberty sucks. I'm sure that you remember. It sucks even more when you're already different. Thank you for your time, for your kindness and your generosity of hearing what I've had to say. As caregivers, you are equally as important as your children, and your mental well-being is important too. Have someone you can rely on and talk to about your feelings and your emotions so that you can be available to your kids. If you would like to chat to me, I am available by email or by text, both of which you can get from SA-ChilD. Thank you so much for your time. I am so grateful.
So that was a really beautiful, honest account of Taryn's experience. We're just very grateful for her for sharing so freely about the challenges that she faced, but also some of the very wise words of wisdom that she offered. And one of the things that I found particularly relevant, and there were multiple of them throughout the talk that she's just given us, was that how she encouraged us to appreciate the fact that it takes a village to raise our children. And this also applies in the face of puberty and all of the complexities that we might encounter there. And that caregivers need to be relying on others to help them through this process and to be a support for them as well, so that they can give back to their children. So if you have any other insights or things that you found particularly relevant during Taryn's talk, we welcome you to pop it in the chat. And also for our upcoming speaker, if there's anything there that you would also like to just comment on, we really do value your input and your feedback. So I would now like to move on to our next speaker, who we're very privileged to have share her experiences with us tonight, and that is Sherry Brainard. Sherry is the only person with Down syndrome who has a tertiary teacher's diploma, which she achieved without any amendments to the course. Sherry is also an international ambassador for all people with Down syndrome, and she was chosen for this accomplishment by Down Syndrome International. Sherry is accompanied by her mother, Suzette, who is also a Down syndrome motivational speaker. So thank you so much, Sherry and Suzette, for being with us tonight. And lovely to see you, Suzette. And if you'd like to share your screen, Sherry, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Arthur. Okay, dit is ek maak so. En dan maak ek so. Right. Can you all see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Then Shri, you can start. Okay, let's start there.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. My first question is, why is it important to have the conversation on sexual reproduction and health rights? For many years, sexuality is a topic that has not been talked about in many cultures. Even today, It is a topic that many people laugh about and make jokes about, and parents feel embarrassed when they talk about it to their children. When I was a teenager, my friends talked about boys a lot, but they did not talk about sexuality to me or to each other. When I was present, they did help me to realize that they would like a boyfriend of my own. To me, it meant having a special friend to share my thoughts and what happens in my life. Question two: why is it important to have the conversation? Um, why is it important for you to have the right to make decisions around your sexual rights? I believe it is important for every person to understand their bodies and the physical needs they have. Persons with Down syndrome are just as human as any other person. Handle us the way you would have if we were typical persons who need some extra explanations. I can only speak for myself and from my experiences and how I feel. I live a very busy life, and my sexuality has never been on my mind too much. But some other persons with Down syndrome are different from me, just as it is with typical persons. When we were small, my mother started the discussion by telling us that the part of our body covered by a swimsuit is our private space. I felt comfortable with the fact that I could decide who touches me, where, and I do not touch my private parts in public. That was all I needed to know at that stage. I believe I have the right to decide about my sexual life, but I have to be prepared and provided with knowledge to be able to make my sexual choices. I have to understand how my body works and about the illnesses I can get if I have sexual relationships with more than one partner. I need to be provided with step by step knowledge in a way I can understand the concepts related to my sexuality to prepare me for my choices. I must also know that in my religion, no one should have a
Alan?
s- uh, sexual relationship outside marriage.
Nou, kom, we gaan naar die volgende doen. Dapat
Question 3. Who
not
should we
going. The video is not going. Why can't I get the video to go to the next page?
Okay. Who should we talk to? People near to us who we can trust, like our siblings, parents, or carers, should do these very personal discussions. In my case, my mother talked to us girls, and it made me feel comfortable. She was comfortable with herself, being a woman, and my mother acted normally when she told us about the way the male and female bodies work. Parents have the responsibility to act with confidence and without getting embarrassed during these conversations. My mom handled the topic easily and showed us drawings of our reproductive organs as well as of our other organs like our lungs and heart, which made us feel comfortable. That was after she explained reproduction. When the two tortoises in our garden gave us a practical demonstration, my boyfriend and I never talk about these things because we are physically busy every day and it is not something I want to talk to him about. He grew up on a farm and I am sure he has seen the process of reproduction many times. It is important to remember each individual is different. The teachers I work with are young and share information which is very interesting to me, like in vitro fertilization and the fact that some married couples have difficulty to conceive a baby. They handle me like a normal young woman, and I also learn from them. They never make jokes about sexuality. but they do discuss the problems raising their babies and working full time. Question 4. Why isn't it important to have the conversation? I teach children with intellectual disabilities. Some of the girls do not know how to handle their menstruation. It is not fair to them or to the teachers. Some of the boys touches their private parts often. If they do it in public, it will embarrass people. Another big risk is that we can get the wrong information. I believe it is not a sin to have sexual feelings, and the person with a disability should not feel guilty about their sexual feelings. It is so important for parents to prepare their child to be on the alert for people abusing them. A man, well known in our house for many years, tried to convince me to have a sexual encounter with him. If I was not knowledgeable about my sexuality and what it means, I would not have been able to handle this very sensitive situation. The man came to me when I was alone in the house and sat next to me in our living room. He talked to me about me using a condom and then not getting pregnant. He said I should not tell my mother about our conversation. We must teach all children that the words "don't tell your parents" means danger. I felt my whole body freeze. I knew I had to get away because my mother always talked openly to us. So I got up and told him not to speak to me about these matters. I walked away and locked my door. When my mother came home, I called her to my room and told her what had happened. I felt dirty and I cried. The man already left. My mother listened and was so proud of the way I handled the situation. My family supported me and we decided how to handle the situation together. I believe I also have a say in the way such matters should be handled. We had a family meeting 2 days later, and my stepfather called the man to sit with us around the table because that is what I wanted. My parents gave me a chance to speak, and then they supported what I said. The man confessed and cried and said he was sorry. I will never trust him again. We must never keep quiet about any bad things that people do to us or try to do to us. We must not pretend that bad things did not happen if he did afterwards. Our parents or carers must discuss the incident with us and explain to us what actions we can take. Most importantly, our parents or persons near to us should prepare us for the bad things that can happen before it happens. Question 5. What are some of the questions you get asked the most? When I speak at schools, the children always ask me whether I can get married and if I can have children. I don't mind them asking because my mother has talked to me about this. I feel comfortable to talk about these matters because these things are part of life. I believe marriage is a beautiful commitment between two persons. I cannot really get married because persons with Down syndrome do not have power of attorney to sign a marriage contract in South Africa. But we can have the ceremony and live like married people. Gustav, my boyfriend, has asked me to marry him many times. For me, marriage is not just a ceremony and a beautiful dress. We will need assistance to live together on our own. But we do not have such assistance in Bloemfontein where I live. We both love our work and we both live a full life. He loves farming and I love teaching. Our parents give us enough freedom and privacy to make our own private choices. we are both happy the way it is. The other thing that I realize is how much work it is to work full time. And all the homework in when I visit my sisters, I am lucky because I have my own space in our house with my own bathroom and a huge television in my room. My parents give me enough privacy, which is important to me. I never feel lonely because they are around and I have a full life without them too. To the question whether I can have babies, I want to tell you that I understand reproduction and I do think it must be wonderful to have a child of our own. But I cannot have my own children, which sometimes makes me feel very sad. So the children in my school fill a huge empty space in my life. This empty space was created by a hysterectomy when I was just 11 years old and I had no say in this operation. I did not have the most basic female right, like most of you listening tonight. I think parents should talk openly to their children before doing something drastic like a hysterectomy. When I visit my sisters and I see how demanding it is to raise a baby and later a teenager, I understand that it might have been a problem for me to do it by myself. But I still feel sad about the operation, although I understand why I did it. I never menstruated, which I wanted to prevent to help me. I would have liked to have a say in what happens to me. Question 6. What type of information would you like to have to help you make informed decisions around your rights with regard to your sexuality? I did not receive all the information at once, but I received the necessary information when I had specific questions about different aspects of sexuality as I grew up. Sometimes I received information when my sisters had questions. They helped me to think about these matters. I wanted to know how everything works and what one should do and what not to conceive a baby, just like my sisters wanted to know. Question 7. What support would you require from your family or your support person when making decisions around your sexuality rights? I like open conversations without making a fuss. Don't be embarrassed when you talk to me about sexual matters the way my mother talked to us. It seemed that reproduction and sexual relationships is as natural as breathing, but it can hurt any person emotionally and physically when handled in the wrong way. We must respect each other's rights to treat sexuality with care. That is important to me. Open and honest communication helps build healthy relationships and promotes mutual understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for your words of advice and for sharing your experiences that raise some very, very important issues for all of us listening tonight, especially around the concern of potential abuses. So thank you for sharing that experience that you've had. I am going to move on to our next speaker just because I'm looking at the time. And if there are any comments or questions for Sherry, please pop them in the chat function. Right, so without further ado, I want to introduce our third member of the panel tonight, which is Nick Smith. Nick is an award-winning professional presenter, corporate trainer, and disability advocate. He's also a primary school teacher, and in his spare time, which he doesn't have much of, he does salsa dancing. So, Nick, thanks so much for being with us tonight. And just I would just like to ask you from your experiences, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background and some of the experiences that you had at high school.
So I'm a person with a disability. I have cerebral palsy with hemiplegia. This is is a result of a car accident, not complications at birth. So I have full capabilities on my right-hand side, and then I have limited capabilities on my left. So I walk with a gangster limp because I'm cool like that. And then I have an arm that tends to do its own thing from time to time. However, I say that my disability is my greatest weakness, yes, but it's also my greatest strength because it pushes me forward. To your point of high school, I'm going to just take a step back. For primary school and high school, obviously there were good times and there were bad times. I went from a special needs school into a mainstream school when I was about 9-10 years old. I was the first person with a disability at that school. So there were quite a few challenges then. I did get a bit bullied, and yes, this became more prevalent as I became older or as I moved up in the grades. When I went to high school, I had somewhat learned to cope, and a few other strategies, like, for example, introducing myself before my disability, in other words, introducing my personality, breaking the ice, things like that, and also other redirecting coping mechanisms, so that, you know, if someone said something hurtful, I didn't wallow and stay there. I kind of either accepted it and moved on, or I, you know, let it bounce off me, so to speak. I did mention to you, Jackie, when we were preparing for this, that I think people with disabilities tend to mature a lot faster because they have to. We are faced with bigger challenges, more difficult challenges earlier on, and we have to navigate these. Yes, we need support, and yes, we do have support. Like, my family was always there for me, my mom was always there for me, but obviously they're not there all the time, and so we need to, you know, be able to deal with this ourselves. In primary school, for example, one occasion I got pushed down a set of stairs, and then in high school, for no real reason, I got sprayed with mace, and that was just because I was different. But these are isolated incidents, so it's not like it happened every day.
Cool, thanks. Thanks, Nick, just for giving us a little bit about that background. One of the things that I did want to ask you was, when you were a teenager, and I think Taryn touched on this a little bit, was what was your biggest fear as a teenager?
My biggest fear was actually being or dying alone. As you mentioned, it did come up in Taryn's talk. People with disabilities, or let's say everybody, goes through this in puberty and beyond. They want a partner, they want to feel like they belong, they want to feel like someone accepts them and stuff like that. However, with being a disabled person, a person with a disability, it's like a new layer of difficulty. So it's like almost an unwanted upgrade, you know, like, life is challenging enough, but I'm going to give you another level.
Yep.
And so for me, that was, for a long time, that was the biggest fear. Well, after my teen years, but yes, luckily, I'd like to say I am married, so that is no longer the case. So
Yay, and that's your salsa partner, right, Nick?
yes.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, no, super. So I'm just looking at the chat group. I don't see any questions that have popped up as yet. So if there is anyone who does want to raise their hand, say what you're thinking, you can either unmute and do that, or you can just type it into the chat box. Please let us know. Otherwise, I think we can tackle some of the questions that were posed to us before the webinar. So Nick, because and Sherry also, you're welcome to jump in on this one as well. But one of the questions that our potential viewers were asking was, how do we handle problem behaviors in school? And what strategies would you advise for the teachers? And so both Sherry and Nick are teachers. So if you want to take it away, Nick, and then Sherry, you're very welcome to join in as well.
So just to quickly give context once again, I teach mainly grade 6 and grade 7, standard 4 and standard 5, and I tutor high school. So that's where my point of reference is.
Lots of
and
experience.
yeah, I think I've been teaching for 19 years now. So I did jot some things down. The first thing is, I think it's important to understand the root cause. So what is causing that behavior? If you can find out what that root cause is, then discuss it with, with the child and try and, modify that or try and tackle that directly. Because the demonstration or the outburst is just a result of that cause. One thing, for example, could be identifying the triggers. Maybe it's a sensory thing. Maybe it's a communication thing. Because they're not getting their point across verbally, they are acting out in another way. Also look at building skills that help them cope with these negative behaviors. But rather, in building those skills, teach them positive things that, give them that same, like, I want to say, like, good feeling. So maybe, for example, they go and do sports instead of fighting with people. Maybe they get their anger out in a different way. Also provide, and I think this came up with Taryn's talk as well, is provide a structure and predictable environment with boundaries. This is quite helpful, although counterproductive at the time, it might seem, because the child won't want those boundaries, but they actually thrive in that space. They know when they've crossed the line, and they know that, okay, there's this boundary and I mustn't cross it. And if I do cross it, there are going to be some consequences. So that's the general outline. And then I know there are some teachers that ask this, so I'm going to quickly share 2 ideas. I've got many here, but I'm going to share 2. The first is a colored card system for introverts. So if your child that you are dealing with or is acting out is an introvert, and again, I'm talking about a classroom situation, give them a set of cards that have different colors, for example, green, orange, and red. And then if they are going through something and they don't want to tell you, but they need to communicate it with you, allow them to hold up that card. But between you and the child, they know, or the 2 of you know what that card means. So for example, red card, I need time out, and otherwise I'm going to have an outburst. So then they hold up that card quietly, and then you say, okay, you can go to the bathroom, or make up another excuse, go and see another teacher or something like that. Give them an opportunity to remove themselves from the situation. And then obviously the other colors can mean other things. You decide what that means. So that's the one idea. And then the other idea is one thing that I do often, and this ties in with the boundaries and the barriers, is timed activities or a time warning. So as you're working through something, put a timer up and let them know. So just out of interest, we've got 5 minutes for this, or, we'll be moving on and doing this in 10 minutes. Or like Taryn said, you've got 20 minutes to freak out, and then after that, we're done. Take a deep breath, go for a run, go for a walk, whatever it is, but in 5 minutes, be back here. And then I normally send them with some device that has that timer on it, and then they'll come back when that's out, when that time is done. As I mentioned, many more strategies, but I'm going to stop there for the sake of time.
Yeah, I thought that 20-minute strategy that Taryn shared with us was particularly helpful, because it's good to vent, it's good to release emotions and to say what's on your heart and what you're feeling, but then after a point, it's not actually productive anymore.
Yeah,
So
yes.
some good advice, like express it, get it out, and now actually move on and work on the coping skills. So that's, yeah, thank you, Nick. It's one of the questions that has popped up before. If you could give your younger teenage self some advice about the challenges of going through puberty, not just, as a teenager, but also having some different abilities, what would you give your younger self that advice?
I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of, I said that my disability is my greatest weakness, yes, but it's also my greatest strength. I think that's what I would try and communicate to my younger self. Because one of the moments that I remember, I was 13 at the time, and I was sitting on the edge of my, well, I was sitting on my bed with my legs outstretched in front of me, and my shoes were off, and I was staring at my toes. Now, as I mentioned previously, I have full control of everything on my right, but not on my left. So I sat there on my own in my bedroom, and I wriggled the toes on my right, and they wriggled. That was great. Not very exciting, but it was predictable. And then I looked at my toes on my left, and I tried to wriggle them, and they didn't wriggle. Surprise, surprise, not a surprise, because I knew that was my disability. However, being a teenager, or an early teen, I wanted to be like everyone else. So I was in a moment of depression there, because I was like, all I beeping want is for my toes to wriggle. Like, it's not that hard. Can you just wriggle? I'm not asking for much. I'm not asking to be a millionaire. I just want my toes to wriggle. But that's never going to happen. Now I accept that, and obviously I accepted that a little bit after that too. Out of interest, I gave myself my own time. I was like, okay, you've got time, deal with it. Okay, now we're done, and I moved on. But I think if I had to give myself advice, it would be, yes, you are different. Yes, you can't do things that other people can, but you can also do things that other people can't. For example, you are much more mature, and you can guide people, and you can understand people in a much better way. Like, I would think that people, not always, but in most cases, people with disabilities tend to be more understanding and more patient because of the things that they've gone through.
So true, so true. Nick, I just wanna bring in Sherry and Suzette at
Sure.
this point. Just because one of the questions that we had posed, and Sherry, you touched on it a little bit, was with you going through adolescence and the challenges that you're having, what role do fathers play? You mentioned your mom a lot, you did mention your stepfather during that one critical period, but what advice would you give to the fathers of females going through adolescence?
I will tell you about my late father, because my father was the best, how could I say, best father I ever have
in the whole world.
in the whole wide world. Because he made jokes, he he supported me, and he laughed. When I think about my father, I think he's a very clever man, and also a lovable father, and also he accepted me just the way I am, and yes, and I love him so much.
You still love him so much.
Yeah.
Jackie, I'll also come in here. Her father passed away just after she left school. But the one thing I will remember, I was 25 years old. He was 28 years old when Cherie was born. So it was our firstborn. But I think the father plays the most important role, because it was my firstborn. And I remember him coming, and he was very sad, because at 42 years ago, everybody cried and nobody actually congratulated us on a baby. So I asked him, would you think had the wrong chromosome? Do you think it was the egg cell or the sperm cell? I just wonder who of us was actually then the reason for Cherie's birth. And he looked at me and he smiled, and he said, oh, I hope it's the sperm cell, because I love her so much. So I would like to tell fathers, if you accept your baby, the mother will accept the baby, and you as a team will raise the child. And that is why Cherie is a happy child today, because even though her father did pass away tragically at a falling off a waterfall, so he made a huge exit. But he was joking. He enjoyed her. I was the strict one. One parent has to be strict, and I expected of her to do the right things. He expected of her to be happy. That's the father's role. But I think Cherie must also, that
Thank you.
first question, um, she has something there to say.
About the, yes,
Okay.
from a teacher's perspective, that would be super.
Yeah,
Okay, the first question is that the children I teach are small. So I will tell you how I handle the children going through puberty in school. The children did bully me, and I tried to handle it. So I told them the Lord loved me more because He even gave me an extra chromosome in my last year in school. The children also
they
um
chose.
they chose me as a class leader.
So it worked.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Suzette. Super. I'm looking, I still don't see any questions in the chat. The very quiet group on tonight.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to pose a question in the chat. Live on the edge. Type the question.
Just do it.
I've
Yeah.
been doing this for many years. So has Cherie, and we can pretty much answer anything. And if we can't answer it here, we can definitely try and get back to you in some way or form. So please do type that message in the chat now. The one that's been bouncing around in your head, like I wonder if, or I wonder why, or something like that. Hit the chat now.
Suzette, sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, and Jackie. When Cherie was born, the people also told me, they told me many things that was not true. And they told me, you can be lucky that it's a girl because the boys are very sexually inclined. Boys with Down syndrome are very sexually inclined. They have to get inspuitings, injections, dankie Cherie. And I had this fear of this over-sexualized child, perhaps also she can also be this, and it's not the truth. They perhaps have a little bit less inhibitions. Um, all, all children think of certain things. Perhaps they will just say what they think. But really, don't be afraid, people out there, for persons with disabilities or especially intellectual disabilities. They're not going to do anything wrong to your child. They're just the same way as any normal child. They have the same needs. They have the same, they feel love, they feel sexual feelings, but if they're brought up well, they'll look after themselves. Don't worry.
Excellent words of advice. Thank you, Suzette. Well, I'm just thinking that this might be a good time, looking at that we have hit 8 o'clock, that I would just like to share for those that are not members of SA-ChilD. I have seen this question pop up in the chat box. So I just want to bring out our slide here. So if you would like to become a member of SA-ChilD, we would welcome you to join the link, which is sa-child.org. You will find all the information there that you can register and join. If you are a member of SA-ChilD, we host several webinars a year, usually every 6 weeks, where you can then qualify for CPD points. We are also linked with the International Alliance Academy of Childhood Disability. So this is part of the global organization. We have got academies in North America, South America, Europe, Australasia, and SA-ChilD is part of this global community. And one of the big upcoming events is our listening and sharing session, which is taking place on the 29th of November. There's going to be a fantastic opportunity for all of you who are listening tonight to join us. During the day, there's going to be 24 sessions held across the every hour. There's going to be a new country coming on and tackling the topic of families, who cares for them. So it should be a very interesting webinar to join, because it's going to be from across the world, lots of information being shared. So come join SA-ChilD, join us on 29th of November as well, as we are part of this global collaboration. So with that said, I really want to give a massive thank you to the panel of speakers that we've had tonight. Taryn, who was unable to join us in person, but shared so beautifully from her heart. Cherie and Suzette and Nick. It has been invaluable hearing from your lived experiences. We can, as healthcare practitioners, we can read on the textbooks, we can, look at articles, but to actually hear the substance and the experiences, and from your insight, that has been absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure everyone tonight has come away with at least one or two key messages that they can hopefully implement in their practices and in their life going forward. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, from my side, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. And thank you to my fellow panel member, Cherie. It's always awesome to have you there. And also to everyone that joined this evening, thank you for joining. It's an important topic. I think someone mentioned in the chat that not everybody wants to talk about it. And so some people might even avoid, a session like this. Yet we got so many people here this evening. So I just want to thank those that attended.
Can I just, I see there's a question in the chat box about the sensitivity of the workshop, and would we be able to run a workshop at a special school or at a particular school? Jackie, I think it's something we can look at because Cherie and I, we will definitely be able to attend a school like that, but I'm sure Nick, we can all go there. So we can talk about that. I think we must just discuss this question as well.
Yeah,
Not
so
tonight,
thanks,
but some other time.
Yeah, I see it's actually come up twice. So Linnea and Bianca asking about workshops and talks. So thank you for that. I think that is a very important point, and let's see how we can facilitate that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great opportunity for SA-ChilD, and also, as I mentioned, Cherie and I make a good team because I'm coming from a physical disability perspective, and then Cherie's coming from a intellectual disability. And out of interest, I have a sister who's also Down syndrome. So I know what it's like to have a sister with Down syndrome. So that's why we get along so well. Much love. So, we can definitely make something work.
Oh, that's super. Thank you all. And if you have any feedback for us, if you have any comments about whether you'd like a part 2 for this topic, which is a big topic, and we've just touched on the surface of it, please let us know, and we can try and organize for next year as well for a part 2 and possibly part 3. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening further.